Hello, my name is Edith Vasquez, and for this Omni presentation, I will be talking about extracurricular activities and GPA. This was for my statistics class, and with the help of my professor, Sean Ferguson. So the outline for my presentation, I will be talking about the introduction and motivation, the literature review, research questions, my data collection, my data analysis, the results, and the conclusion. So ever since high school, I've always been very involved in extracurricular activities and have been told that students who are in clubs are more successful. I wanted to see if that was the case in college. Therefore, I decided to do my statistics research on extracurricular activities and GPA. I am involved in a couple of clubs on campus and found this topic very interesting. I noticed that many of these students in these clubs and organizations were very smart and had high GPAs. I also noticed that sometimes having a lot of responsibility, especially having leadership in these clubs, could affect schoolwork. I wanted to see if there was a positive correlation between extracurricular activities and GPA. For my literature review, I was able to find some sources, and the first source was extracurricular activities and their effect on the student's grade point average. And this study, it said that extracurricular activities had a positive effect and it increased the grade point average. And my second source was students who participate in extracurricular activities get better grades. And my third source was students achieve much higher rates of graduation, maintained better grade weighted averages, and had higher good standing rates when they engage in extracurricular activities. So I came up with 3 research questions. My first research question is there any correlation between age and participation in extracurricular activities? My second research question is there any correlation between gender and participation in extracurricular activities? And my third and final question is, are students who participate in extracurricular activities more successful in school than those who aren't involved in any clubs? For my data collection, I collected the data using Google Forms with the help of my professor. At first, there were many responses, but as time went by, more people started responding. I was able to post it on social media and got a couple of responses. And then, once I asked my professor if he could share it on Canvas, more people responded. It was voluntary response because people chose to take it when I sent it out via social media. I used Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat, and I got about 90 responses. It took me about 4 to 5 weeks to collect all the data, and I created this questionnaire with my professor, and he was able to give me helpful feedback. And there was about 8 questions on the survey, and some of the questions included: what is your age, what is your gender, what is your GPA, do you work, just to get an idea of the demographics of the people I was surveying. So these are some of the definitions I wanted to talk about before going into my data analysis. So for the null hypothesis, it's a hypothesis that there is no significant difference between specified populations, any observed difference being due to sampling or experimental error. And then the alternative is using hypothesis testing that is contrary to the null hypothesis, and the chi-square test, which I used to observe my data, is relating to or denoting a statistical method assessing the goodness of fit between observed values and expected values. And then the p-value in statistical hypothesis testing, the p-value or probability value is the probability of obtaining test results at least as extreme as the results actually observed during the test, assuming that the null hypothesis is correct. And I will be talking about these in a little bit. So for my data analysis, I was able to clean my raw data and sort it out based on gender, age, extracurriculars, and grade point average. I conducted a 3 chi-square test for all of my research questions, and then the null and alternative hypotheses are as follows. So for my research question 1, the null hypothesis is the age and extracurricular activities are independent. My alternative hypothesis for my research question 1 was that they are dependent. My research question 2, my null hypothesis was the explanatory and response variables are independent. My alternative was the explanatory and response variables are dependent. And for my research question 3, my null hypothesis, the distribution of the population proportions for a categorical variable is the same in all populations of interest. And then for my alternative is that there are not the same for all populations of interest. And so I was able to create tables, and this is the table for the observations of age and extracurricular activities. So I was able to sort people who were 21 or younger and 22 and over, and I got about 87 responses. And then I created the expected frequency when two variables are independent, and I was able to put them into this table, and I put it into the calculator, and I was able to get the chi-square, the p-value, and I got the chi-square of 1.9 and the p-value of 0.15, and using the level of significance of 0.05, alpha was greater, my p-value was greater than 0.5, so therefore we had to reject the null hypothesis. We failed to reject the null hypothesis, and we reject the alternative hypothesis. So that means that age and club membership are independent and therefore not related. For my research question 2, the table 3, the observed frequency for gender and club membership. So I was able to sort it between females and males, and if they were in a club or weren't in a club. And then I created the expected frequency table when the two variables are independent, and I put it into the calculator, and I got 0.32 for my chi-square and my p-value of 0.5, and using the same level of significance of 0.5, my p-value was 0.569, which was greater, so that means that we failed to reject the null hypothesis, and it is not statistically significant. So the explanatory and response variables are independent. And for my third research question, the chi-square test for homogeneity in two-way tables, I was able to put it into 3 categories, and from 0 to 3.0, 3.1 to 3.9, and a 4.0 plus. I created the expected frequency table, and I sorted it out and put it into the calculator, and I got my p-value in chi-square. So my p-value was 0.6507, which is greater than 0.5, so therefore we failed to reject the null hypothesis, and we reject the alternative hypothesis. So that means the distribution of the population proportions for club work and GPA is the same in all populations of interest. So to answer my research question, for research question number 1, there seems to be convincing evidence that there is no relationship between age and club membership. For my research question 2, the answer is there is convincing evidence that there is no relationship between gender and club membership. And my third question, there is no difference between students who are involved in extracurricular activities and those who aren't and their GPA. So there are a couple of limitations to this study. One of the limitations is that I posted this survey on social media and therefore incurred volunteer response bias. The participants chose whether to respond to my survey or not. And another limitation to my research is that my sample size is just 90 students. I think in order to be more certain, we would need a lot more samples, like more than 300. So if I were to repeat the sample 1,000 times, the results would be more accurate. Another thing I would have done differently is to have defined extracurricular activities, because that could also affect the response, because it can refer to sports and volunteering, but I focused mainly on club work. So the myth that students involved in extracurricular activities have higher GPAs might be wrong. However, correlation does not mean causation. There's convincing evidence based on my research that there seems to be no difference between students' GPAs that are involved in extracurricular activities and those who aren't. Thank you.